Right, so now we're back. Now, there were developments in humans' ancient history that have been denied in the past by Western academia and Western civilization. The reason for the denial, people try to dance around the issue and say, oh, well, I don't know what was in their minds, but everybody knows. And it's that sort of wink and nod your head and deny so you don't have to confront the Western establishment. But I'm giving it to you straight. There was a racial bias, and that racial bias was because the Africans had been on the planet longer, and they were more technologically advanced, and they were more socially advanced. So they didn't have the things like wars and prison and fighting that the later developing people had. But I'm gonna break it down. So those Africans migrated out of North Africa 50, 60, 150,000 years ago, and they met with and bred with Neanderthals and Denisovans, and this is in North Africa and in parts of Southern Europe. But there was also a migration west. That migration west went through the place that we call Saudi Arabia and into Eastern Europe and up into and through the Caucasus Mountains. Now, I suggest and I submit that there was another migration, because I submit that there were 4 different types of African migrants migrating at the same time out of Africa. I submit that a type left Southern Africa by boat, and well, actually, they left by 2 forms. Both were by boat, but in 2 different directions. One went to India, and the other to Australia. And I support that with genetic evidence that the Australians and the Indians have a similar phenotype and morphology, and you can look that up into detail if you want to find out the exact specifics and why I submit to you that supposition. All right, so continuing. Migrating out of Africa, 3 different types. One type went north into what we call Europe, starting through the peninsula of southern Spain and going all throughout Spain up north up until the British Isles. And we're talking roughly 35 to 40,000 years ago. So the British Isles was inhabited by black African migrants up to 35, 40,000 years ago. But something happened between 35 and 40,000 years ago. But I'm going to pause on that side of the migration and go to the other side of the migration. There was another side of the migration that went east, like I said, east into Europe, through Arabia and into Europe, up and through to the Caucasus Mountains regions. Okay, so now you got people in those regions occupying those regions between 15 and 35,000 years ago. But what happened between that time frame? There was a revitalization of an ice age. We call it the Worm Glaciation Ice Age. And what happened was great ice sheets, mile thick sometimes in places, came down in the northern regions and isolated the people from the northern regions, or in the northern regions, from the southern regions. A lot of the people, like the people that were in the parts of Britain and stuff, died off. And they had to wait for another wave of migration for people to enter that area. But the people that were trapped up north in the Caucasus Mountain regions and so forth had to develop anew. They had to adapt to, you went from a lush living condition to where your focus was on, and when I say focus, I mean paradigm, a way of thinking and a way of living. Your focus was on spreading and a sharing of the abundance. If you have an abundance, then your priority is to make sure that everybody in your group gets to share of that abundance. That has manifested itself into what is called communism today, and it's called a bad thing. But it wasn't really a bad thing back then. It was a community sharing its resources. All right. The people who were trapped by the Ice Age had to develop a new lifestyle and a new paradigm because there was no longer an abundance. Now there's a harsh and scarce condition. And just like other mammals that are in that harsh and scarce conditions, what they do is they develop a hierarchy, just like in the wolves. So that's why I call the 2 separations of the paradigms of people, the culture of the wolf and the culture of the gorilla. The gorilla culture being a sharing and caring of abundance, and the primary concern is that everybody gets to share in the abundance, and the wolf being a hierarchy and a domination and fighting for survival and doing what it takes in order to survive. And if that means killing, that means killing. If that means that when the offspring gets old enough to take over the father's role, then that's what happens. All right, this is your boy Key. This video is getting ready to cut, and I'll be back at you for some more. Stay tuned.